You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about Spikes at myaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution in trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That distinct lack of music, at least for the live folks, means that it is time once again for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever exciting, at least we think so, Options Insider Radio Network, of course, available on pretty much every platform under the sun. If you like it live immediately in your ear holes, you can always upgrade to the plus. And of course, if you want to join the coolest secret club in options, then of course, check out the pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. So you get all the live stuff. Plus, of course, you get the cool pro Q&As. We had a pro Q&A palooza last week. So I hope many of you got to enjoy that. You can check it out, of course, on demand. You get that pro podcast feed that also includes options oddities and other cool stuff. The month's coming to an end. So the drawing for our second Options Insider Pro Trading Crate is about to be underway. We're going to pick one of our pro members to get that. So all sorts of cool stuff. When I get back to the studio next week, we'll start putting that together for you folks as well. So a lot of cool stuff on the member spotlights coming, all sorts of cool stuff. So if you like that, you want to go a little bit above and beyond, check it out. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. And of course, wherever you listen live after the fact, make sure you keep rating and reviewing on your platform of choice. And of course, keep those questions coming. We do love to hear from all of you folks out there. And let's see who we're hearing from today. First off, let's go out to deep in the heart of Texas, where he took a break from eating delicious brisket just to talk to us. He is the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from the old OP, aka the Option Pit, Mr. Meatball. Welcome back to VolView, sir. It's been a while. You're so excited that you've muted yourself, sir.
I did mute myself. That's how excited I was. I'm excited to be here. I'm happy to be back. I missed doing the show while I was on my world tour, but I am back now and happy to be here.
I heard you threw out the first pitch at Wrigley Field while you were back in Chicago, sir.
Well, I would have thrown it at the Ricketts with what they just did to Anthony Rizzo. I'm heartbroken right now.
I thought that might not be well, hey, there's always room on the Sox for another championship player. It seems like as the White Sox will probably be going to the big dance this year. We'll see. Cubs probably not so much. So we shall see. But they'll make room for him on the south side, and he'll be nice and welcome there. As we keep on rolling, let's move on out now to the MIAX hot seat, where we are joined once again by Mr. Tom Jark, the Vice President of Proprietary Product Development over there in MIAX land. Tom, welcome back to Volatility Views, sir.
Mark, thank you very much. Happy to be here. I did not get to throw out any opening pitches at any Yankee games, but maybe someday. I'm curious, Mark, if you hit the strike zone or not, but we'll find that out later. Jersey's a great day today, but we had tornado warnings yesterday, which shouldn't really happen in New Jersey. Anyway, looking forward to a good show.
So let's get to it then. Let's kick off that good show. It is time for the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Review, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down the week that was and indeed still is some vol trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity and all sorts of perspectives. And coming into the end of the week, markets deciding to take a bit of a break from their green run. Most of the major indices off somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.5%. The NASDAQ a little bit more than that, almost 0.6%. The S&P slightly under 0.5%, and the Dow about 0.4%. All of them in the red today, which meant earlier in the session we saw vol getting a bit of a lift. Now coming into the start of the show, we're seeing that lift start to mitigate a bit. Spikes was at an 18, pretty much exactly coming into showtime, puts it up about 1 point. It has drifted, looks like a little bit below 18 since the start of the show. And VIX Cash was at about an 18.25 when we kicked off. The show's like it has drifted down to about an 18 now as well. So that puts it up about 0.75 of a point. When we started the show, up about 0.5 point now from where it was last week. So net on the week, a whole heck of a lot of nothing from a vol perspective. Getting on out to VVIX, aka the vol of vol. That is actually still a little frothy. That's at about a 116. That's up about a point from where it was this time last week. So, all right, the volatility table is set. Let's go around the horn. Let's go the opposite of the way we started. Let's start in the land of MIAX. Mr. Tom, what is lighting up your tape this week, sir?
Well, I guess a few things. I mean, obviously we had a little bit of choppiness this week. I think a lot of the attention has really been on China for the most part. So I mean, U.S. indices, not feeling the moves that they saw. I'll use FXI ETF as a reference, which is a good proxy to the HSCEI index in China. I mean, that thing is down 25% from the peak in February. A good chunk of that happened this past week, and it's been obviously very volatile. So that's something that's been really, kind of catching my attention just as a, kind of an outlier, unexpected kind of moves this week. It's just been, I'll talk to you a little bit later about some of the things going on in Spikes futures and Spikes overall. But it's been so like I said, most of my interest has been over in Asia, unfortunately, for the U.S. traders.
We need to have an Asian segment on the show. Maybe that'll be a new. We used to have in the early days of the show. We had a brief period there where we had a international vol segment. I do believe Jared Woodard used to do that on the show here. Maybe we need to bring that back because it is a fun element of the show.
Yeah, well, there's an interesting part to it, Mark, is that there's a structured product called autocallables, which is very much, it's a very popular product in Asia, on Asia products and in Asia indices, whether it's the Kospi or the HSCI or any of these different Nikkei. And what that product does to the volatility environment, it causes a lot of, strange dynamics versus like the U.S. market. Although those products are picking up interest in the U.S. But in a nutshell, when those products get launched, and all the callable, I won't get into the actual details of what the trade is, but the dealer community gets long a decent chunk of Vega when they're launched, and then as markets go down, they actually get longer Vega. So they typically have to sell volatility when the markets go down, and vice versa. And at some point on the upside, these things can knock out, and similar scenario on the downside. But there's a if any of the listeners have a connection at one of the bigger banks, they usually do a lot of research on these things, and they have what we've always referred to as peak Vega. So you kind of know where the peak Vega is in those markets, and you kind of it's a real sensitive spot in the market of volatility, because when you get there, it's a potential, if you break through those barriers where now the dealers were long vol, their products kick out, and now they're short vol. So they have to, do a big squeeze, but it didn't seem like that kicked in this time around, but definitely some big moves in there. So
I like it. We could spend some time on that. And in future shows, I think that's an intriguing concept for future investigations as we keep on rolling back now to the Southern OP studios. We were joined by the Meatball. Mr. Meatball, sir, a lot going on this week, and then kind of wrapping it up with a bit of a whimper here this week. What was lighting up your tape this week, sir?
Yeah, so Amazon, wow. It is a big wet blanket on this whole market. It way exceeded the straddle price. They were looking for about $100 move away from 3,600, and it's moved $250, was as low as 270. VXAZN, the VIX of Amazon, was actually falling yesterday into earnings. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say this one caught the whole market by surprise, and it's pulling everything down with it. So far, tech earnings have been pretty bad. Facebook getting beaten, Pinterest getting beaten badly. About the only winner out of any of the big mega cap names has been Google. Everyone else kind of slapped around a little bit, and that has played its way into VIX. And another trend that I'm on top of is, we're only about 20 points away from the all-time high. If we settle here, we're going to close up $50 on the month at least in the S&P. So call it a little over 1%. And yet the VIX over that same period of time, and spikes for that matter, up about 3 points over that same period. So there is definitely some appetite for volatility and volatility premium, and it is concerning if you are long this market. The market is not comfortable with where it's trading right now. Feels like there's some sort of shakeout coming. And the other thing that I've noticed, and I know we'll get to this, is how light VIX paper has been the last couple of weeks. Post July expiration, VIX volume has fallen by the wayside. And that's another, I think, concerning thing, because most of the paper that has fallen away has been puts. A lot of put volume has fallen dramatically in the volatility index. And that is, quizzical and interesting to look at right now.
It is indeed. Looking at some of the crazies in our secret club here, we got Options Queen just declaring victory again. I'm thinking that it could be the winner of the crystal ball again this week. Well, a cursory glance here, I think you were at an 18.25. That ain't too shabby. It's better than mine, that's for sure. So if you take it third week in a row, hopefully, by the way, Options Queen, we sent you a little something before we left here on vacation. So hopefully you're enjoying that exclusive Options Insider gear. The least we could do for being just scarily precise 2 weeks in a row with your crystal ball predictions, and maybe going for 3. We'll see. I mean, the show is young, but hey, if you learn nothing from me, it is declare victory early and often. I'm glad to see you are doing so. So yeah, wear that exclusive options insider gear with pride as we keep on rolling here. Let's get out to the land of the futures. Tom, you kind of mentioned this earlier. This has kind of been your bailiwick. You've been kind of hanging your hat a lot out here, and you guys for a while there at MIAX have been talking about some of your incentive programs to try to drive a little bit more flow, a little bit more paper out there. How is that going? What's been lighting up your tape in the land of Spikes Futures these days, sir?
Yeah, so Spikes Futures, thanks for asking, Mark. It's been quite successful in our mind. I think Mark was on here a couple of weeks back talking about the program a little bit too. So, the market participants, liquidity providers, those that are in our market, we've seen a real nice pickup in volumes, pickup in, quote quality, which is, tighter bid offer spreads, as well as, decent size on the bids and offers. It's, as of, the program is a 3-month program currently. And keep in mind that there's no exchange fees for anybody that, trades in the product right now. We're looking at, an average daily volume right now for the month of July, around 1,600 per day. We were, our hurdle, not our hurdle, but our target was, a little bit over 1,000. So we're quite pleased, and we're quite pleased with the involvement in the market, in the trading community. It's been pretty exciting. It's a pretty good, and the phone, we've been getting a lot of incoming phone calls too, asking about, hey, what's going on? We're seeing, because a lot of people have been waiting for a little volume pickup before they got involved. So we're taking some of those calls as well, which is nice. It's exciting.
The delicate dance of launching new products, right? People don't want to play till there's some volume, but you can't get the volume that people decide to play. So I don't envy you that task, Tom, but I'm glad to see things are flowing your way. We got Mr. Unlimited in the chat. He wants to know if he could borrow Options Queen's time machine. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm right behind you there, Mr. Unlimited, because that time machine is eerily prescient, to say the least. I think we all could get some value out of that. Let's go on out now to the land of VIX futures. Keep that futures ball rolling, and wasn't a heck of a lot lighting up the VIX futures tape today as well. I mean, a little bit of flexing on the front end of that curve, but that's really about it. Coming into showtime, that AUG future was up nearly 1/4 of a point. It's really about it from where it was this time last week, and it's probably given up some of that now as well. And the SEP future was, up about 1/2 point coming into showtime. So that was really about the lion's share of the flexing going on out there in the land of VIX futures. Mr. Meatball, anything catching your eye this week in the land of the volatility futures, sir?
Yeah, the curve. The curve is really flat beyond September, super flat in both spikes and VIX. And the spread between the cash and that front month has been pretty wide, showing how uncomfortable this market is with what's going on. And that's really, I think, been the big eye opener for me over the last week, is that vol you can actually purchase is really bid.
Let's see what's bid out there in the land of the options. Let's start in Spikes options. Tom, in your neck of the woods here. Again, on the last show, we had that big kind of 5-way 1,000 lot that was up there for July in Spikes. That obviously rolled off the board with Spikes expiration. Been waiting for some new stuff to replace it. Looks like we got some of that actually yesterday. So pretty close to showtime here, Tom. Looks like it was a AUG 2017 put spread go up 1,000 times against the AUG 30 calls as a kicker. Any color you want to shine on that for us, Tom, and anything else catching your eye out there in the land of Spikes options this week, sir?
No, I don't. Spikes options, obviously, those trades are great. It seems, folks are using the product and understanding it. But nothing really to share on the options side this week. We're just, we have been reaching out to a lot of the options liquidity providers, having conversations and gauging some more interest. So it's we're out there talking about it, and we're looking for things to improve in that space as far as volumes and just overall liquidity. but it's been moving along quite well.
Interesting strikes on the hedge if they are using this with the 2017, because that's a pretty meaty put you're putting on there. The 20 put, obviously, they put that on for $2.19. They sold the 17 puts against it for 38 cents. Looks like they also sold the AUG 30 calls for 68 cents. Looks like they did that for around $1.13 or so. They paid for essentially for that AUG 20 put, I'm assuming, against some long vol position out there. So an interesting one out there. We'll see as more of these positions start to build out here in August. Let's roll on out to VIX options. Mr. Meatball kind of alluded to this earlier. Not the most rock'em sock'em robots of weeks for VIX options. In fact, the ADV is down about 10,000 from where it was this time last week. It's at about 463,000 right now. So ebbing a little bit this week. Today, get about not even half of that, really, 195,000 contracts on the tape right now. Let's break down a top 10 of these sizable positions, and we'll see what we could find that was intriguing this week out there in VIX options land. It looks like we're at a 60-40 split right now in the top 10 VIX positions. So calls outnumbering puts in the top 10. Read into that what you will. Is that kind of feeding back into what the Meatball was saying earlier? Maybe some folks looking for a little bit more vol to come. We shall see. Cost you 118,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX land right now. They get you all the way to the AUG 50s. That's one of my favorite strikes out there. Number 9, 119,000 of the SEP 40. So a lot of upside here in our top 10 here. Number 8, 129,000 of the October 17 puts. Our first of 4 puts here in the top 10. Number 7, $1.32 of the AUG 20 puts. Number 6, 133,000 of the SEP 30 calls. Number 5, $1.49 of the SEP 35 calls. Number 4, 164,000 of the August 16 puts. Number 3, $1.71 of the August 17 puts. And now we're getting even more optimistic on the vol front. Number 2, 191,000 of my other favorite position in the top 10. It's been out here for a little bit now, the Nove 60s. And then number 1 with an interesting bullet out there again, 223,000 of the SEP 25s. You will recall, listeners, the largest size position in VIX options for the last few months since April really was that July 25-40 call spread. They put it on for, I believe, $2, took it off for pennies right before expiration. So that leg of the trade at least didn't work out too well. Hopefully the other leg did. But in general, the option, they had some opportunities. We talked about on the show. They had some opportunities to get it off for better levels. Not quite $1, but close to it. So they could have cut their losses in half. But not so much on the options front. Mr. Meatball, anything lighting up your tape out here this week in the VIX options? And also, are you of the mind that these SEP 25s is that same guy coming back to play again on the 25 strikes?
It totally could be. I think the really interesting thing is the drop in total open interest. Average open interest in VIX is about 8.3 million contracts. It's down to 6.7 million. And that big drop is almost all puts. Puts are down by about 1 million contracts. That is a huge deal. The big trades for the day that I'm seeing so far, there was a big buyer of the Feb 65 calls versus the Feb 30 calls. Did that about 1/5. I'm still parsing through what the exact trade was. But they bought 10,000 of they either bought or sold 10,000 of the 30 calls and then bought or sold 50,000 of the 65s. So kind of an interesting trade there in VIX Feb. Other than that, volume's been super light. Nothing has really popped on my tape that has really been super exciting in the volatility complex at all. The second biggest trade for the day is the SEP 42s at about 20,000 of them bought for about 97.5 cents on splits. So just not a lot going on in the complex as a whole. And when it is these big, far out of the money calls being bought. We've seen a lot of the 50 and higher options trade in VIX, not so much around the 20s, 25s, and 30s, which I think is interesting.
The old 1.5 is back, Mr. Meatball. just in VIX Feb options instead of the old OEX days. So yeah, let's break down some of that paper that we saw, such as there was this week, listeners. Starting out today Not, like I said, not even 200,000 contracts on the tape today. The big trade, of course, the aforementioned Feb 65s, exactly 50,000 of those bad boys. That is an intriguing trade, the 1/5 ratio vertical, listeners. How do you like it? Does that intrigue you? We'll see. 22,000 as well for number 2 of the SEP 42 halves. Number 3, 16,500 of the AUG 16 puts. Number 4, 10,000 of the SEP 32 halves. So it looks like maybe a SEP vertical going up there, maybe a ratio as well. And number 4, the other half of that 1/5, 10,000 exactly of the Feb 30 call. So Feb 30, 65, 1/5, listeners. What say you? How do you like it? Buy 1, sell 5? Sell 1, buy 5? Either way, it's intriguing and or outlandish. Let's move on out a little bit to Thursday. 308,000 contracts, so kind of a light day on Thursday as well. The most active contract, 40,000 of the AUG 35. So that gets back to what Mark was saying. A little bit more, shall we say, optimistic strikes lighting it up these days in the vol space. Not your standard 22s, 23s, maybe 25s. Got 35s dominating it yesterday, so that is interesting. Number 2, 34,000 of the SEP 17 puts. Number 3, 26,000 of the AUG 25 calls, so getting back to maybe a little bit more rationality on the vol front. Number 4, 25,000 of the SEP 18 puts, and round out the top 5 yesterday, 16,000 almost exactly of the AUG 16 puts. Wednesday, even lighter volume if that's possible. 219,000 total on the day. About 20,000 of the Nove 70s. That was the big trade on Wednesday. So what paper there is in some of these outlandish strikes. Number 2, listeners, 14,001 of the SEP 95 call, 9-5. So those are your top 2 strikes for an anemic day on Wednesday. The Nove 70s and the SEP 95s. I don't think I even need to say more. It's a ridiculous day, however you cut it out there. Let's go out to Tuesday, another kind of quiet day, only 292,000 contracts on the tape. Got some put action on Tuesday, 23,000 of the AUG, 18 puts from number 1, followed by about 16,000 of the AUG, 21 puts from number 2. Number 3, AUG 35s, back out to that vol optimism again, 15,500 of those. Number 4, 13,200 of the Dees, gone out to Dees now, the Dees 20s. And then round out the top 5 on Tuesday, about 12,000 of the AUG 17 puts. Monday, similar kind of anemic paper, only 230, not even 250,000 contracts on the tape on Monday, listeners. The most active contract, again, going back to those AUG 17 puts, 21,000 of those. Number 2, we got the Dees 20s. Dees going up again there, 13,000 times. Number 3, about 12,000 of the AUG 32 halves. Number 4, 10,000 as well of the August doubles, AUG 55s. That's an intriguing strike. Number 5, 10,000 as well, the AUG 29 call. So maybe an AUG 29 double vertical going up out there. That's an intriguing one as well. Before we get into some of the other vol products folks like to fade, Mr. Meatball kind of led the show with this. Let's go out a little bit to earnings vol as well, because it is on fire. What do we have here? We have Nichols in the live chat saying, is Amazon the canary in the coal mine for earnings vol? Well, it's interesting because we've been saying that for a while. What is the thing? What is the inflection point that will finally mark the return of volatility from an earnings perspective? Ever since the pandemic began, we've seen them just squeezing that vol. And it didn't really matter what the announcement was. It didn't really matter what the firm said. They could have wiped their guidance for the entire year. It didn't matter. They still crushed the vol after the announcement. And it was shocking in the early days of the pandemic. We've kind of grown numb to it now. Here we are a year and a half later almost. But still, it is fascinating to watch this play out in every cycle. It's been the same question. I've been wondering it. Matt, the guy who crunches all these for us over there at Orats, has been wondering it for a while. Will this be the moment? They have been coming for those straddles. We had those big names popping off this week. Monday we had Tesla. Tuesday, UPS, GE, JetBlue, Apple, AMD, Microsoft, and Alphabet, and Starbucks all in one day. That's like a season in a day, listeners. Wednesday, you had Boeing, you had Pfizer, you had Mickey D's, Spotify, Facebook, Ford, and PayPal. That's a whole week, just those 2 days. And then Thursday, you got Amazon, you had WWE, you had Gilead, and today, ExxonMobil, Caterpillar, P&G, Chevron, and more. Let's see. We've got some move results reports here. These are popping off from, let's go look at a couple really quick here. Ford, that's a hot one you guys like to watch. Ford was 28th after the bell. I take it back. They were at 1386 going into their announcement. They priced in 4.8%. They delivered 3.8%. So underperforming out there. Facebook also after the bell on the 28th, they were at 373.25. They were pricing in 4.5%. They delivered 3.4%. So kind of par for the course there. Qualcomm, hot in the chip. Maelstrom out there also on the 28th. They were at 142.5. They were pricing in 4.5%. They delivered 6%. So maybe a little bit of a ray of sunshine out there. PayPal, same deal. They were at about 302. They popped off on the 28th as well. They were pricing in 4.2%. They delivered 5.1%. So a little bit of outperformance there. Let's go on out to some of the names that were popping off later this week. Mr. Meatball just alluded to one, that is Amazon. They were at 36.30 when this report was run. So obviously a wee bit lower now. They were pricing in 136.5, listeners. And as of right now, they're off 244. So a wee bit of outperformance for that straddle. And, we always say it. People say, well, if things are underperforming, that's when you have to just blast away at all the straddles, right? And you get a name like this, or we saw, I think it was Nike at the tail end of last season. You get a few of these names that just blow the doors off from a vol perspective, and that's enough to wipe out your entire season. So you have to be a little bit judicious out there. Gilead, they're at $70 even, popping off after the bell yesterday, and they delivered $2. Oh, so they're pricing in $2. In the past, they've moved 181. Let's see how good old Gilead, another hot name out there these days, how that one is performing. 68.5 right now. So off about $1.50. So kind of light there on the earnings vol front as well. Let's do one more for the Meatball, because I know he loves this stuff. Let's go out to WWE. They were yesterday after the bell. They were at 49.20. And as of this announcement, they were pricing in $3.78. In the past, they're pricing in $3.50. In the past, they've moved $3.78. Let's see where our good friends WWE. Where's Uncle Mike when you need him out here? $49.71. So they're getting a little bit of a lift out there, but not enough. It's they're up 50 odd cents. So that's a whole lot of nothing from an earnings vol perspective. Mr. Meatball, you mentioned Amazon. Is that aside? That one's obviously a big player right now. Any others lighting up your tape or the tapes of your crazies out there from an earnings vol perspective these days? And I will, before you keep going, I will also put the question to you that I pretty much put to everyone right now that has on everyone's brains. Is this the season? Is this the cycle where the vol worm finally turns, sir?
No, it's probably not. But I will say that Pinterest is another name that absolutely blew the doors off of how much they were expecting. That was one I'm watching. For how bad Amazon earnings are, the ETF that's actually getting beaten the most is XLE, because ExxonMobil and Chevron are both getting a little bit of a face punch. Oil as a whole getting it today. Anything in the oil business, those have been soft, and that's been about the only area where we've seen any real kind of performance out of anything. Amazon, Facebook, a little bit of follow through today. Tesla made a really nice, nasty down move and then has made a nice up move, but it did not perform up to its straddle. So neither did Caterpillar. Really, everything kind of cheap relative. All the straddles have been a little overpriced, except for Amazon and Pinterest.
Which sounds crazy to say after we've been squeezing them for a year and a half, but still, there is apparently more blood to be squeezed from that stone. Let's see how much blood was squeezed out of the products you folks love to fade these days, listener, which is, of course, let's start in the land of VXX. Coming into Showtime, it was actually up, so you're not getting that erosion. It was up about 1/4 point to 30 1/4 out there. Let's see how it's holding up as some of the vol seems to be coming out. It's a little bit shy of the 30 handle now, about 29.80 odd or so. So giving up some of that juice now. It puts it pretty much unched from where it was at this time last week. The ADV ticking up a little bit, up about 3,000 from last week, up to about 223,000. Today, not blowing the doors off, only 121,000 contracts on the tape. But then again, the ADV is only 223, so that's actually mildly decent paper. Let's look at the top 10 out here in VXX. Let's do a top 5 because some of the bottom ones are still dominated by a lot of those In fact, the whole top 10 is still kind of dominated by those pre-split adjusted strikes. Number 5 out here in VXX right now are the SEP 14s, 1-4 listeners. Obviously, that's VXX1 doing that's about 21,500 contracts open. Number 4, 23,000 of the SEP 9 puts. Number 3, 24,400 of the AUG 28 puts, getting back out to good old real American VXX here as opposed to VXX1. Number 2, 27, almost 28,000 of the AUG 25 puts. And number 1 with a pre-split adjusted bullet out here, still the SEP 10s with about 32,500 in terms of what's lighting it up out there today. 7,000 of the SEP 30s going out today. Well, again, that's kind of your at the money strike right now going out today. So the SEP 30s expiring today, July 30s expiring today, is followed by the July 30 puts also expiring today with almost 7,000 of those as well. Followed by the July 29 half puts and 30 half puts and 30 half calls, all doing between 6,000 and 3,000 contracts each. All those going out today. So not a heck of a lot of surprising paper on the tape. Mr. Meatball, anything crazy coming across your tape or the tapes of your crazies in VXX this week, sir?
Yeah, it had a real push higher on Monday and has since given that away. That's why the saying goes, it's a day trading product, not a buy and hold. The active options are all expiring today. The 29.5s have some volume. The 30s are trading hot. The 30.5s, and that's about it. The 29.5 30 strangle expiring today is less than 20 cents. That's an interesting little trade for those looking for something to do on expiration.
That'll give you something to do. That's for sure. Monitoring that strangle as it slowly erodes out here. All right, let's keep on rolling to a product that is also kind of slowly eroding. In fact, coming into Showtime, it was exactly unched from last week. This is UVXY. It was at a 28.5 exactly when we kicked off the show, which was pretty much exactly unched from where it was this past week. So again, net on the week, a whole heck of a lot of nothing. It has given up about half a point of that now. It's down to about a 28 as the show has progressed. So maybe making up for some lost time. Not exactly translating to a ton of paper, but a decent day from a UVXY perspective. About 100,000 contracts exactly on the tape right now. And the ADV is only 130,000. So that's actually not bad. That's actually up about 4,000 or so from last week. Let's break down the top UVXY positions first, just do a top 5, then we'll see what's lighting it up out there today. Number 5 out there actually looks like, except for one, these are all modern UVXY, no pre-split adjusted nonsense here. Number 5, about 8,000 of the AUG 70s expiring on the 13th. And if you're saying, if that's not crazy enough for you, if you're saying, I need a crazy strike that's expiring even closer to now, then number 4 are 8,000 of the AUG 70s expiring on the 6th. So someone's really got an axe to grind on that 70 strike and has done so, looks like, for 2 weeks there. So an intriguing strike. We were joking about VIX getting up to those levels. That's even crazier for a product like UVXY to get up to those levels. So interesting stuff. Number 3, almost 9,000 of the July 30s going out today. Number 2, our only pre-split adjusted contract here, 9,500 of the Jan 1 puts. And then rounding out the top 5 here in UVXY, about almost 10,000 of the July. Someone loves this 70 strike. The July 70s are the number 1 open position right now, just about 10,000. Those are going the way of the dodo. So whoever put those on, I'm sorry to say, probably not going to hit 70 by the end of the day. Hopefully, if you sold them, you got some juice for them, because that is an interesting strike. And looks like someone's trading more of those today, because in terms of what's active today, about 7,000 of the July 28 calls going the way of the dodo today, followed by number 2, about 4,300 of the AUG 70s expiring on the 20th. So someone's got a strip going here, the 6th, the 13th, and the 20th of the 70 strike, all in UVXY. I don't know what's afoot there, but I'll have to see what these things are trading for. If they're selling the 70 strike, hopefully they're getting some juice for it. Number 4, 4,100 of the July 30s going out today, but followed by 4,000 of the July 27 halves going out today. And rounding out the top 5 most actives today, we got about 3,700 of the July 29 calls going the way of the dodo today. Mr. Meatball, What are your thoughts on your preferred VXX short product, UVXY? And also, corollary to that, how many of these AUG 70s did you buy today, sir?
I bought all of them. That's all me. I love buying way out of the money calls in UVXY because I can't lose. Kidding. You know what's interesting on UVXY is that, it has not had a new low in a very long time. And that's unique for UVXY. You normally expect it to kind of constantly be hitting new all-time lows. And it hasn't touched a new low since July 14th. Since July 2nd. So it's been almost a month since this thing has touched a new low. So you got to wonder, if we don't get a big push, is there a flush coming in UVXY? And the answer may be yes.
It is interesting that after this thing just couldn't stop eroding ever since it reverse split. You're right. Now all of a sudden it's kind of been vacillating in this round 30 area again, which is intriguing in and of itself. By the way, before we move out of these, I forgot to mention how the vol season is shaking up from an earnings perspective. And right now we are at about a 61%, but this does not include the Amazonians. I expect the updated report will look a little different, because the Amazonians blowing the doors off. But right now, it is still a Volmageddon out there in the earnings front. So week 1 was at about a 79%, looks like, and week 2 coming in at a 57%, and the season itself averaging out to looks like about a 61% so far. So all those who were thinking this was the season, well, so far at least, the answer is a resounding no. And speaking of answers, we probably got some for you folks out there as we roll on into your volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's answer some of your cues out there. You already went out to the live chat out here. You folks get bumped to the top of the list here. You know the secret handshake, and everyone's pretty much just bragging that they're going to win the crystal ball this week. At least Options Queen is here and talked about Amazon already. Let's go on out here to... People have, what's with the skew index these days? People have skew index on the brain. Big Convex. I like that handle. You get bonus points for the handle. Big Convex says, what is the point of the skew index? I find it rather useless. Well, we've discussed this ad nauseum on the show of late. I don't know why. Maybe this is a sign. The sudden renewal of interest in skew index is somehow a sign of where we are in the vol market right now. We've talked about it before. It's got two moving parts that they kind of mash together to make this one somewhat obtuse number. Usually it's around a 150 or something. What does that tell you? It's informative if you have nothing else. If you have no other vol metrics or skew analytics at your disposal, and you only have the skew index, it's certainly better than nothing. But from a perspective, I much prefer to look at the individual wings and draw your own analysis. I don't know. Mr. Tom, are you a big fan of the skew index? Or are you like Mr. or Mrs. Big Convex here? Do you find it rather useless, sir?
I'll be honest. It's one of those that's not on my radar as far as as far as a metric to follow. From some of those different indices that I look at, like there's other ones that I feel like add more value to me than that one. So I mean, I'll throw out another one I like to look at sometimes is the CSFB one. That one I find interesting sometimes, but I prefer to look at the VIX or spikes levels over the skew index. I've looked at the calculations a while back, and I know what it is, but it's not on my radar.
Mr. Meatball, same question for you. Do you like the skew index, or as Big Convex puts it, do you find it useless?
I think it'd be a lot more valuable if it was updated in real time as opposed to at the end of the day. But when it hits extremes, that does tell you stuff. Typically, when it's at extremes, that's bullish. And when it's at its flattest, that can be a sign that the market's a little too complacent. So it does have some use. There are better ones out there. SDEX, which is put out by Nation Shares, is a better index. One of the things I like to keep track of for skew is I will actually subtract VolQ from VXN, and that gives me a very good idea on what NASDAQ skew looks like, and that is something I will trade off. I think skew itself is extremely valuable. This index, I'd like to see them update it more than at the end of the day. I actually laid out what they could do. They ignored me, but it's not a utterly useless, but it could be much more useful. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I didn't even mention the lack of dissemination. It's once a day. That completely limits the utility as well. Speaking of utility, we got Nichols here in the live chat. He wants to know if I think he's calling you Mandela. I think he corrects himself. He says meatball, obviously an autocorrect. He wants to know if the meatball, what do you think of, do you use the CVOL? Are you familiar with these, Mr. Meatball? These are the new kind of implied vol indices from CME. Have you seen these? And if so, what are your thoughts, sir?
You know what? I have not looked at them, but I will make it a point to look at them for next week. I'm sure they're interesting and worth a look.
They're intriguing. You know, we talked about them a bit on our TWIFO program. They're kind of taking that kind of VIX and spikes methodology and applying it across the broad spectrum of products there. So you got ags, you got metals, CVOL, you've got, an equities, obviously CVOL, and all sorts of whatever energy CVOL, whatever complex you want, FX, there is a CVOL for it. Same issue Nichols is going to apply to CVOL that does to skew index right now, which is, of course, it's not a tradable thing, and it's only disseminated once a day. So the amount of utility there is not as much yet, but, it's something for products that were kind of opaque from a vol perspective before, unless you were really firmly entrenched in them, like ags or things like that. You can now go and look up a CVOL number, and for anyone who's intrigued, listeners, just type CME and CVOL into your browser. It should take you to the page. They have them all there. You can kind of just look now and get one kind of snapshot of vol across the different commodity complexes, which is interesting. And again, it didn't really exist before, so more vol information is always better than none. So I'm always going to err on that side. But yeah, this same issue that plagues skew plagues this. It's once a day, and they know that. They're going to update it. It's kind of just a starter thing right now. They're just kind of disseminating the data slowly, and they're going to start speeding it up. But it is an interesting addition to the vol space. We'll see how that continues out here. Let's see. JDA wants to know, you guys carry any upside VIX calls in your portfolio for a rainy day? Maybe 6-month, 25-plus strikes. Thanks, and love all the shows. Well, we love you back there, JDA, and everyone else takes the time to listen and read and respond out there. Let's go out to Tom first. Tom, I didn't get your chance to. If you have any thoughts on our listener question about CVOL, have at it. And then B, what do you think about JDA's question about just throw in some upside VIX, maybe 6-month, 25-plus strikes in your portfolio for a rainy day? So what do you think of that?
So yeah, on CVOL, I think any indices, any products that are explained well and people can find value out of them, I think it can be helpful. To Mark's point, I've looked at these early on. I haven't really analyzed them, and probably as a competitor product, I probably really couldn't speak too much to it anyway. But yeah. So it's but the thing that the irony of it all is, I laugh sometimes when I see the ticker, because when I was at Citigroup in 2000, to show my age a little bit, 2010, we launched a volatility ETN called CVOL. That was a ticker. And what it was 2 times long the front VIX future rolling into the second, so like TVIX. And then it had an S&P short delta component to it, which we recalibrated every quarter based on its beta. It was the idea was it tracked VIX spot very closely, but that thing was delisted many moons ago. Never really took off. But as far as VIX in the portfolio, VIX upside calls or spike upside calls, I'm sorry, I can't really comment on my my positions or what, but I do see, I could see merit depending on the volatility levels that you're buying those at. If someone's adding those to their portfolio when VVIX is very low and the volatility of the options in VIX are low, or spikes in this case, then it might not be a bad thing. But you got to keep in mind the overall level of volatility and the overall level of the implied volatility of those volatility options, so you're not overpaying for things. So, but and to Mark's point before, these are it's a tradable product. I wouldn't if things move your way, you might want to take a little bit off the table maybe, and not just sit and wait.
Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. What do you think of JDA's query about maybe throwing some VIX upside, maybe 6-month, 25+ handle calls in your portfolio for a rainy day, sir?
I always subscribe to let the VIX start to move before putting on a hedge. And it's at a spot that's starting to look interesting. But I'm not completely against it, but I would want some sort of long component against that because the likelihood of that working. And the other issue you run into is that if we get a near dated move, even with those long dated calls, you're not going to participate the way you want. For 6-month calls to work, you need a 2020 type of event, a Volmageddon 2018 type of event at a minimum. So that's why I generally lean toward buying short dated stuff when vol really starts to move rather than holding some of those long-term call options. And if you're going to do those long-term call options, you're likely better off with some sort of call spread than with a straight call because the cost of that upside skew is so monumentally expensive as you move further back.
Maybe we should explain that to all the people out there in the VIX options who are on the 60s and the 50s and the 70s and every other ridiculous 95s, all these ridiculous strikes that are lurking out there right now. But great questions, everyone, as we keep on rolling into the final, the most difficult, dare I say it, the most dangerous part of the show. Unless you're options queen, then you just kind of knock it out of the park every week. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crystal ball. This is the portion of the show where we attempt to wrestle with the slippery volatility pig known as spikes and VIX. Coming into the end of the show, we have spikes a little bit north of 1775, about a 1782 or so. So it has given up the 18 handle, if ever so slightly. A VIX cash at a similar level, right around 1790 odd and change. And, she claimed victory early on. Well, we might have a little bit of a fight here going on. But first off, let's break down where myself and the Rock Lobster were last week. The Rock Lobster was feeling not a lot of vol. He was at a 1601, so barely fighting to maintain the 16 handle. I was a wee bit north of him. I was 1635. Neither of those are correct, listeners. Let's take those off the board. Then we had a bunch of you folks playing out. A lot of you were feeling more vol this week rather than less. VixMan, whoever that is, was at a 20.04. So no winner there. Melts, 1976, an excellent year, but not an excellent vol prognostication this week. JJ coming back in again. He was at a 1645, so scumming me by a 10th of a point. Thank you very much, JJ. Alan at a 1765. Oh, that's not too bad. And then we got Mr. Unlimited. He said he was feeling lots of vol for this week. He was at a 24.5. He said, yes, I am going big. Yeah, you went big. Unfortunately, vol did not follow suit. Options Queen, kind of our reigning champ here, was at an 18.25. She said, Mr. Unlimited, I think your thoughts are spot on, but I don't think it will go quite as high. You were pretty much a bullseye until the show started, and then it kind of has slowly eroded a little bit. My boy Luigi said he was going for an even 22. He thought Mr. Unlimited was onto something. So a lot of you folks in the listening audience were going for more vol this week as well. Like we said, looks like it's a bit of a fight between Options Queen at her 18.25 and Allen at his 1765. Looks like Allen kind of wins on spikes, and Options Queen kind of takes it on VIX, because VIX is about a 10th of a point higher out there. So, wow, just the fact that Options Queen's even in the conversation again is kind of ridiculous. You do literally need to give us your crystal ball. This is 3 weeks in a row now. I don't know what voodoo you're doing, what volatility gods you are sacrificing to, but I would like to meet them and discuss them, because this is getting kind of eerily. It was already eerie last week. Now it's just kind of scary at this point. So well done. You're so close. I'm going to tip my tap to you, Options Queen. Also to Alan coming in there again, one of our pro members here. So interesting stuff. Let's fast forward to this week. We already sent you a prize, Options Queen. What can we send you now? I don't know. You're going to clear out our studio pretty soon. Let's go around the horn, though. We'll start with Tom. Tom, you haven't been on in a little bit. What are you feeling for Vol this time next week, sir?
It's funny. I keep going between a 19 level or a 16 half level.
Well, that's kind of where we are, right? It's kind of like a lot more Vol or not much.
And I'm looking at spikes, but I feel like I'm gonna go with the lower end. I'm gonna go with the 16.55 double nickels.
16.55 for Mr. Tom. All right. And Mr. Meatball, you haven't played in a little bit, so we'll let you go next, because why the heck not? What are you feeling for this time next week, sir?
Well, I'm going to go with the old bet against my book, and I'm going to say 19, but I'm going to give you a big wide hole here, Mark. I'm going to go 1955.
19,
so a whopping point and a half higher than where we are right
1955. Now. 1955. Given what we're seeing out there, that wouldn't surprise me all too much if that did indeed come to pass. So now you're right. That's a whole 3-point chasm in there. Do I want to go beyond it? Am I crazy? Am I saying a 20 handle? Am I going to go below? Am I going to go a 15 handle? What am I feeling? This is one of those crazy weeks, listeners, where my antennae are all over the place for that. But I think a little bit more Vol might be the order of the day this time next week as well. Not perhaps as much as the Meatball is feeling, but I'm going to say an 1833 for this time next week. Oh, we got Mr. Limited chiming in saying he's at a 16. Oh, jobs report. He's got a good report. A good point. There is a jobs report next week, so he's at a 1667. He's feeling what Tom's feeling down there. Get your guesses in now, listeners, and if you guys are as successful as Options Queen has been, then we'll see about getting you folks something cool from the old studio there. Unfortunately, that music means we've come to the end of yet another hour-long journey through the world of volatility. But before we go, let's go around the horn again. Let's start with Mr. Tom, sir. If folks are intrigued, Options Queen, she's staying the same, 18.25, holding firm. Oh, I'm at an 18. See, now you're scumming me, Options Queen, even though you were there a week ahead of me, so I can give you pride of place. But there we go. Myself and Options Queen right around that level. That's looking pretty good. That's a power duo there. I'm just saying. Factor that into your prognostications, listeners. All right, let's go back around the horn. Mr. Tom, sir, if folks are intrigued, they want to learn more about spikes, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
They could go to the website for MIAX, which is MIAXoptions.com/spikes, and you can find all kinds of info in there.
There you go. MIAXoptions.com/spikes is the place to go to begin your spikes journey. You get the data there, historical. You get press releases, what's coming out next. You even get a link to a cool show called Volatility Views. What more could you possibly ask from a vol-oriented destination? And Mr. Meatball, if they want to hit you up, maybe they want to debate earnings, volatility, or talk about all the other cool stuff you guys have going on, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Yeah, go to optionpit.com and check out everything we're doing. Andrew and our friend Frank Gregory just are launching a brand new product called Capital Gains. It's about how Washington can, understanding what's going on in Washington, can produce a hedge fund-like portfolio. Go to optionpit.com and check out Frank Gregory's blog, Power Moves, for more information.
There you go. Check it out, powermoves.com. And, of course, speaking of checking things out, stay tuned, everybody, in the Secret Club with the Secret Handshake. We'll be back in exactly an hour to break down the weird, wild, wonderful world of unusual options activity with options oddities. Then, of course, we're back again next week. I'll be back in the studio in Chicago again next week for Volatility Views. And we're back again on Friday. Of course, another episode of your favorite Vol show. Yes, it'll be another episode of Volatility Views. See you then.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, Spike, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about Spikes at MIAXoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution and trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available on the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.